To be or not to be? To do or not to do? To create or not to create? To innovate or not innovate? These are really the Hamletian questions that we should not be asking ourselves. Why the questions, the real questions are, why are we not innovating faster and better? The real questions are, how to do it, how to innovate faster and better. We will try and deal with these very relevant issues and questions in our panel today. And we should thank UNWTO and Anáhuac University for the privilege to be here in this wonderful campus of Anáhuac University in Mexico. Let's thank them, WTO, the UNWTO, United Nations World Tourism Organization team, led by Secretary General Taleb Rifai, by Director Carlos Boheller. Let us also thank you, the Anáhuac University team, and very especially the Faculty of Tourism and his director, Dr. Francisco Madrid. Thank you also, last but not least, to all of you here for participating very proactively in this, to me, magnificent forum, which I think is a milestone. And we have the honor and pleasure to have reunited in the panel three key figures of tourism knowledge and tourism intelligence at world level. All three of them, sitting here with me, are Ulises laureates of the United Nations World Tourism Organization, and they have deserved the highest world recognition for their contribution to tourism policy and strategy. They have been introduced, but I will do that again. To my left, Professor Don Hawkins, George Washington University, and 2003 Ulises laureate. Also to my left, Professor Jafari, University of Wisconsin, and 2005 Ulises laureate. And to my right, Professor Kaye Chon, Hong Kong Politécnica University, and 2011 Ulises laureate. And thank you all of you for being here. And now, my dear friends, my dear colleagues, let's go to work. We have already seen that the real questions are how to go about innovating, not whether to innovate or not, but how to go about innovating. But there is a previous question, a previous issue. If we all pay service, sometimes lip service, sometimes service, to the concept of innovation, why then are we not rushing now, rushing madly to do it? We should be all running, but we are not, that is not happening. So why not? Let us admit that while innovation may open new worlds, it does open new worlds, but it also destroys some of our very cherished old worlds. As very well has been said, over 70 years ago, Joseph Schumpeter, the very famous economist, talked about innovation as creative distraction. And we have to admit, all of us, that there's a little bit of distraction in innovation. And that may explain why are we all not, all of us, rushing to innovate. We and organizations often talk about creativity and innovation, but then, very often, we go by the rules of the game. And innovating is dangerous. It's dangerous sometimes at an institutional level. It can also be dangerous even at a personal level. We, in fact, live in a culture that very often has some risk aversion. Innovation has an element of risk, and we have to recognize that our institutions sometimes are, they pay lip service to innovation, but they are not so much really for risk. Not all the time. So the first question is, if we believe in innovation, we should be thinking deeply about why we are not really innovating and look about it. The second issue, it will be three issues that I want to mention before beginning, really. The second issue is, are we talking about innovation to survive and to sustain our present ways of life? Or are we talking about innovation to build a new world, innovation to build new features? Many participants in this forum have been trying to jointly, the past days, to clarify the exact concept of innovation. We have seen that many believe that technology is very strongly linked to innovation. But I think we all have a suspicion that is not the end of the game, that there is more to innovation than only technology. So, shall we consider also market innovation? Shall we consider process innovation? Shall we also think about governance innovation? I think all of them. I think all of them, of course. But to clarify it a little bit, I would like to go back to Schumpeterian, Joseph Schumpeter views and say, why don't we think about, number one, innovation which is reforming, innovation to do a little bit of reform. And why that? Because of course we live in a moving world, of course there are changes in the environment, of course in our everyday circumstances there are changes, we have to adapt, so we may think about a simple kind of innovation which is simply to reform. Then we can go a little bit beyond that and think about a second stage of innovation that could be redesigning. We are not only changing the color of our kitchen, we are redesigning a little bit our new townhouse and make sure that it is good, we can live comfortably. And that means certain change, but not too much. And the third one is really, I could say really dangerous. The third one is redefining innovation. Innovations where we redefine what we're doing. Not only we think of different ways of doing what we're doing, but we are thinking of different things to do, redefining innovation. So the first two, reforming and redesigning innovation, are most often sustaining innovation. They sustain what we have. They adapt little by little progressively to change, and they make sure that we can survive in a changing world. But the third one is deep. It is really changing the world. So while the first two, again, reforming and redesigning, are usually broadly accepted. Yes, why not? We are going to save some costs. Yes, why not? We're going to be more efficient, more competitive. Why not? Okay? Perhaps some people will lose a few jobs, but they can be compensated. Fine. But the third one, redefining innovation, is threatening many of our comfortable positions. It's threatening many jobs. It's threatening many positions in society. It's threatening some of the structure of our institutions. So that has to be taken with a lot of courage, if taken at all. So that's the second question. What sort of innovations are we talking? And the third question, and last, I promise I'm now about to finish, is, yes, let's admit that innovation, there are at least two elements. One element I would like to consider is human capital. We are at Anáhuac University, and Anáhuac University is in the business of building human capital. All of you who are students in Anáhuac, all of you who are professionals, have gone through universities and learning institutions where you have improved your human capital. Now, human capital is essential for creativity. If you don't have individuals with good human capital, no creativity. So innovation does not even take off. But is it enough? Of course not. We live in a very, very complex world in which institutions are essential. So human capital is the beginning of the story, but social and institutional capital is absolutely essential. So this is the idea that if we are talking really about innovation, our institutions cannot only be concerned with creativity, individual creativity, but also with providing enough space in our institutions for this creativity to flourish and to become really productive. So it's not only a matter of research and creating new ideas, it's a matter of disseminating them, and it's a matter of implementing and applying them. So research, creating the ideas, disseminating, but also applying the ideas. And if we don't do this, we are not in innovation. Now, this is fairly easily said, but obviously not so easy to do. And that's why we have a conference and much more about innovation, and we are touching about one of the essential topics of tourism, which is how are we going to innovate in tourism, which is going to be essential to survive. I would say it is, to begin with, essential to survive in a changing world where we have climate change, we have many development issues, we have many governance issues, but probably some of us are more ambitious, and we do not only wish to survive in a changing world, but probably we have to have a better world. And that means we'll have to take some risks and go into redefining innovation. And within this, I think I'd like to begin the exchange in the panels. The first part will be exchanging issues and questions. And, but the main idea is how are we going to proceed with this sort of innovation, with the changes needed, so that our institutions are really not only lip service to innovation, but are really involved into performing and achieving innovation, and not only adapting innovation, sustaining innovation, but in some occasions we need institutions who are able to do redefining innovation. I would like to pass the first question. I will be suggesting some questions, but then the panelists, of course, will have much more richer suggestions as to our discussion. In the last part, we'll be taking questions from the audience, but let's begin with the panelists now. And at first, perhaps what I could call preliminary discussion would be the following of, right, we have been talking a lot about technological innovation, and we know this is essential for tourism, but shall we really not consider other kinds of innovation? Shall we not be really concerned with process innovation, with governance innovation? How would you feel about that? Let's go for Professor Don Hawkins to begin with.
Thank you, Eduardo. Definitely, we should be thinking of all three, but I'd like to take us all back to tourism and innovative systems that have really changed the world. Let's go back to Henry Ford. Henry Ford didn't invent the automobile, but he did create the most innovative mass production system in the world at that time, which produced automobiles. Automobiles, in turn, became the major way in which we traveled domestically. At the same time, we needed transportation systems. I am the holder of the Eisenhower Chair. We named it after Dwight D. Eisenhower because after the Second World War, Dwight Eisenhower expanded the highway system in the United States, also added to the national parks and did the first policy study. After that, we began finding people traveling, like Kermit Wilson, traveling with his family, couldn't find a place to stay, so he invented Holiday Inns, which became the huge system. Also, we had the creativeness of Walt Disney with Disney World. And of course, then we were also traveling by jet internationally, and we had to come up with better systems, so we came up with hub and spoke, type of innovations. We came up with frequent flyer, programs. And then somewhere along the line, we began getting into the computer age, so we had Bill Gates, who didn't invent much of anything, but he certainly took the technology and created Microsoft and made computing available to everyone. And then we also then later had the internet, and the internet in turn transformed the way we do work. So my point is we have been very innovative in this tourism field, and we're going to continue to be innovative in the future. And I think we could talk about some of the trends in the panel yesterday. We had some very interesting ideas about innovation as a result of crisis. But I do think fundamentally we need inventiveness as the precursor of innovation. And although the inventors are famous, they often are not the ones who implement the invention through innovative practices. So let's look at invention as one of the fundamental elements that we need to deal with when we talk about innovation. And then let's also talk about the systems that we use for innovation. We have the early adopters, then eventually we have the copycats, and then we have the changes and so on. So it's a very complex process, and I'm very hopeful that we will continue to be innovative in the tourism field, and that other fields will follow us and use some of our innovations as well. Like financial services is following many of the travel services that were in the early stage of the internet. So just a few initial comments to take us back a bit in the past, bring us up to the present, and then maybe we could focus a little bit more on the future outlook.
Thank you very much, Professor Hawkins. And now to Professor Jafari. Professor Jafari, yesterday in another panel discussion, you made a point in favor of other kinds of innovation, that non-technological innovations. In fact, at one point, you even said that we have to control technology. That's what you said. Some of the technological advances should be properly managed to be meaningful for us as human beings and to be meaningful for our societies. Could you elaborate on that a little bit?
Sure. Good afternoon, everybody. If I may go first to the beginning of your comments, to be or not to be, to do or not to do, to change or not to change. Innovation is about change. But I don't want us to feel or think that change has to always happen. There's also called continuity. Continuity would survive until the time that it's not working anymore. So I don't want us to think that we always have to change. We change when the opportunity is there. And I also want us to recognize that our field is different than other fields. By and large, tourism is driven by demand. Any change, any innovation we have introduced in the past has been the result of the change in the demand. Usually supply side respond to the demand. I don't know if other industries are exactly functioning like this, but for sure, tourism falls into this category, that there's a change in the demand, and we respond to that with innovation, change, etc., etc. And I also want to go back to Dr. Hawkins' examples that you provided. They're excellent examples, like you mentioned Disney, so on and so forth. We could add to that list, for example, one which is a bit more historical, traveler's checks. That was innovative. And it survived until the time its death came. And it died without any, it's almost dead, without any ceremony. But the innovation that came had nothing to do with us, the plastic card. We took it, but it's not considered a tourism innovation. We became a recipient of that innovation very quickly. So I just wanted to make this point. And one more point I want to make to distinguish our innovation and change from other industries. Please don't forget that tourism production and consumption takes place at the same time. This inseparability of the two makes it very difficult to figure out how much of what we are doing is innovation. Process sometimes is invisible because the two are so connected to one another. And I think maybe some of this would help us to more sharpen our discussion on innovation as what innovation is, and if there are incremental changes considered innovation, or they have to be radical changes to qualify as innovation.
Thank you very much, Professor Jafari. Professor Chon, Professor Jafari has made very interesting statement, but has made a very strong statement that I would not let to go past unnoticed. He has stated that innovation is mostly, basically, demand-led. This is a very strong statement, because I don't know if demand has the capacity to really collectively see the future and react to it. You have a fantastic experience in Hong Kong, at Hong Kong Politécnica University, and also with the Icon Hotel. And we know that you are a great innovator. How would you appraise those words? That is really innovation always demand-driven?
Thank you. I think the answer is already in the backdrop, because the theme for this Knowledge Network Forum is bridging theory and practice. I think when we came with this theme, I think there must be a reason for the theme. We need to have a bridge between theory and practice. So I think that demand is certainly driving us to be more innovative. Here's one example. One theory we teach in our class in marketing is, as Professor Jafari said, services are intangible, and its consumption is happening simultaneously. So we are teaching in the class that services are intangible, therefore, in marketing services, we have to find a way to tangibilize the service. So what does that mean? That is what we teach, is a theory, but how do we take it to practice? Here are a couple of examples. In our school, I noticed that in Hong Kong, being a professor is very prestigious. When I was teaching in North America, if you are just teaching in universities, we just call them professor. But in Hong Kong, you have to be a full professor to be called professor. They follow British style. And I got an idea from that when we invite industry executives to the classroom to give a lecture just for 1 hour, usually we call them guest speaker. But I thought that for the same thing, if we can call them professor for a day, that may sounds better. And then we also give them a certificate. It's a very nice framed certificate. So-and-so served as professor for a day in Hong Kong Politécnica University. I must tell you, all our visitors who receive that certificate, they are so proud. They take it home, put that on the wall in the office. And they are very proud. It is serving as an advertisement for our school too. Now this is a perfect example of tangibilizing the intangibles. Then it occurred to me that in Hong Kong, there is a famous movie star. I'm sure many of you know Jackie Chan. And Jackie Chan is not only a movie star, but also he's a Hong Kong's tourism ambassador. And then it clicked like this to me. Wow, he's a tourism ambassador. Therefore, he has something to do with School of Hotel and Tourism Management. So I asked him to come and give a lecture as professor for a day. As you can imagine, his lecture was the most popular one. And since then, I got an idea that let's make him a permanent professor. So we made him honorary professor, meaning that he's a professor with no salary, basically. And he's so proud that he became professor. And we made an office for him in our school. And we printed business card for him. Everywhere he travels to, he's so proud to present Professor Jackie Chan business card. He's again serving as a kind of advertisement for our school. He's helping us with fundraising for scholarships and so on. That's an example of benefit of linking the theory, tangibilizing intangibles, into practice. Having said that, we need to also educate our industry because industry sometimes do not really connect the dots between theory and practice. And after hearing this, there was one hotel manager in Hong Kong. You know, in Asian culture, there is a concept called giving a face. Do you know what giving a face is? You are recognizing somebody, giving respect. There's one very affluent gentleman coming to a restaurant in the hotel often. And it's very important that we treat him right, recognize him. When he's coming, every employee is greeting him. Mr. Wong, welcome back to our restaurant. And also important to give him the best table in the restaurant. And then this manager, after listening to my lecture about tangibilizing intangibles, came up with very bright idea. That idea was that now he made a permanent reserved sign. He made permanent reserved sign using bronze. This table is reserved for Mr. Wong, and made that permanent sign. When Mr. Wong is coming to the restaurant, place that sign on the table. This guy used to come to the restaurant once a month. Now he's coming twice a week. And he's coming with his friends. Why? He wants to brag to his friends that, you know, I'm somebody in this hotel. So this is an example of how you can benefit. Now, coming to earlier question about hotel icon, we have a very unique facility in our school. That is, the university has invested $170 million. That is not Hong Kong dollars, that's US dollars, by the way, building a hotel for the purpose of teaching and research. Why we did that was because we said we want to innovate. Hotel industry, to me, is one of the most traditional industries. Has existed for centuries. Therefore, the more the traditional the industry is, the less innovative the industry becomes. I said we need to change that trend of making changes. This hotel is very profitable. If you look up TripAdvisor, among 570 hotels in Hong Kong, that hotel is ranked number 2 in Hong Kong. I must tell you that being ranked number 2 in Hong Kong is not easy because the city of best hotels in the world. The name of the hotel is Hotel Icon, I-C-O-N, because we said we is an icon for the industry. Why this hotel has been successful, many developers are coming to look at it and they said, wow, this is innovation. So what innovations we brought in is all based upon research. That's again connecting theory into practice. In the interest of time, I'll show you one example. In our research, analyzing flight patterns, there are many flights coming to Hong Kong. Imagine there are 1,000 flights coming to Hong Kong every day. We found something very interesting. There are many long-haul flights coming from New York or London or anywhere in the world early in the morning. Somehow, between 5 to 7 a.m. is the most popular time when these long-haul flights are arriving. So we made a conclusion out of that there will be some business travelers arriving in Hong Kong at 7 a.m. and they will go to hotel at 8 or 9 a.m. and say that I came, I want to check in. The hotel say, sorry, your room is not yet ready because somebody is sleeping there now. They have to check out and we have to clean the room. Sir, you can leave your luggage with us and you can come back at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. That's typical scenario. But this guy, after a 14-hour, 15-hour flight, want to change, want to take a shower, need to go to a meeting, cannot do anything of that. So we came up with the idea of creating a lounge for these people. We have a lounge called Timeless. There's no time in the lounge. You can imagine first-class lounge in the airport, actually slightly better than that, but small. We create a lounge, and it's a complimentary lounge. So these business travelers can use it until they can check into the hotel. I must say, all guests love this. I don't know how many guests say that they keep coming back to the hotel because of the lounge. Now, major hotel chains are all coming to look at it and say that, one hotel chain in Washington sent 18 people to look at the lounge. And they asked me, can I take a picture? Oh, yeah, you can take a picture. Can we take a measurement of this? You can do that too. I said that the purpose of this hotel is for us to research, innovate, and share the knowledge with the industry. Therefore, please take as many photos as you like. So this is an example of how we can connect the theories into practice. Thank you.
Professor Hawkins, the subject of bridging theory and practice has already appeared on the screen, and Professor Chon has brought it up. And you have quite a long experience in WTO, in UNWTO, in trying to bring support for UNWTO tourism policy activities from the world of academia, also the world of business, but basically the world of academia. Do you think you have gone through many initiatives in WTO, the Education Council, the Education and Science Council, and now the Knowledge Network? What have we been doing right and wrong from your perspective at George Washington University?
That's an interesting question. We have UNWTO representatives here, but I've always had a sensitivity to UNWTO because I'm very focused on international development. That's the way we have distinguished our program. We started it 44 years ago, and we said we want to focus on international development and not just simply the U.S. model being exported elsewhere, but truly an exchange of experience as to what's working, what isn't working. And in that journey, I became active with UNWTO when the United States was actually a member of UNWTO. Thank you, Mexico, for still being a member. I've tried for the last 8 years to try to get the United States back into UNWTO. But in 1980, I was on the U.S. delegation, and that was the time when we were debating the first vocational training policy for UNWTO. At that time, Secretary General Roberto Lanati kind of cooked all the reports. He actually had all the reports done. But the U.S. delegation says, no, we don't agree with the report. And we had a debate of almost 2 hours because the mentality at that time was to control, as opposed to be open. So from 1980, I began to see that the infusion of education and research into UNWTO would be very, very positive. In 1988, we became the first university to affiliate through a joint agreement, and we still have the International Institute of Tourism Studies. It's now in operation for 26 years. So we were the first university, and then we were joined by others. University of Calgary, and then University of Surrey, and then gradually more universities formed, and mainly with the leadership of Dr. Eduardo Fayos, we created the Education Council. And then the Education Council wasn't quite enough. We wanted more science and research, so we added education and science, to the mandate. At that time, education was a part of the UNWTO portfolio, but then the Themis Foundation was formed, and they used an innovative approach called TEDQUAL, Tourism, Education, and Quality, which essentially was surveying employers, identify their needs, surveying training institutions, determining what they're doing, and of course there was a gap. And the whole idea was to close that gap. But eventually that became a certification program for colleges and universities, but fundamentally in its early stage, it was focused on employers' needs, employer demand. And then the next stage was I guess we lost our Education Science Council, and many of us became very concerned. The UNWTO didn't really have an education science mandate, and then evidently all of the education programs were part of the Themis Foundation. But fortunately, we're now in a transformation stage, very positive stage, and this particular forum is an example of that activity, and there's an effort to integrate the TEDQUAL program with the Knowledge Network program and bring everybody into the committee of affiliates and really to strengthen this program. And we'll be, I'm sure, making some suggestions later. So I think it's been a bumpy road, an evolutionary road, but fortunately, education and research still has a place in the UNWTO family.
Thank you, Professor Hawkins. Yes, I think we agree. Innovation is a bumpy road. Yes, full with interesting things. But we are approaching the stage of the hard questions. So the next hard question goes to Professor Jafari, and is the following. I think I already inquired Professor Hawkins about what is good and bad about the bridging academia and the world of tangible tourism. But let me rephrase it in a different way. We all know that sometime in the 80s, 1980s, 1990s, the governments became more and more involved, not only in promotion, but in something that we are responsible. We invented the concept of tourism policy and later on tourism governance. The governments began preparing a sort of white books, white papers, but also the idea of tourism policy plans, strategic plans, and so on. So the governments began involved, not only in promotion, big name, but also in policy, okay? Other issues. So Professor Jafari, in your view, has this provided for a good bridging of public-private sectors, civil society, or has in fact meant that some bureaucracy has arrived into the world of doing business in tourism?
You're right. You're asking a very hard question. Let me first go to the last two comments, and I come back to your question. Beginning with the last comment, I heard Dr. Hawkins saying that the issue of education research through UNWTO is a story of change. He called it evolution. Therefore, we are talking about change. For something to become innovation and innovative, needs to become popular. Other people copy it. So if Dr. Chon's timeless launch is copied in many places, they have invented the idea. But if it's only there and nobody else copies it, I would not call that change. I would not call that innovation. It was something internal. And we already heard that they're already coming to the university, measuring it, looking at it. So this means the beginning of an innovative idea in the field of hospitality. And for that, in advance, congratulations. Now, policy. Policy goes back to the issue of having the authority and being practiced. We have a lot of policies that are collecting dust. We hire consultants, they come up with policies for land development, vegetation, social impact studies. They're right there, but they go into a folder, they're all forgotten. You remember all the stories of master plan that WTO did, a large number of them. Which one of them, and they all contain policies, which one of them really did the job? So policy, in order to become innovative, needs to be practiced by others and done routinely. But I do want to add a comment to your comment in regards to bridging theory and practice. The way we four sitting here and are talking about is that anything that we change or create or innovate is backed by research. Not just sitting together, oh, it's a good idea to change that. We do the theory, we do the collection of data, the sampling, and so on and so forth. Then we have a body of knowledge. Based on that body of knowledge, we contemplate the issue of change. If it is radical, then it becomes innovation.
Thank you very much. I think you have managed to somehow evade the hard question. but let's go back to it in a different perspective. Yes, those were the happy times in the 1970s and even 1980s when tourism was growing. In the 1960s, still oil and energy was cheap. Tourism is very much based on energy, so the cost of energy does really impact on us. So let's say that in the 60s, 70s, and even in the 80s, although the oil crisis, tourism had some framework of operations for businesses. Businesses basically could count somehow on basically stable frameworks, except for energy shocks. However, you may agree with me that in the present, this is not exactly so. Our scenarios are anything but stable. They are changing all the time. And we have some big issues already here. Climate change, governance, development, they're already here. So if we are going to use innovation to build the future, that is the real meaning of innovation, to build the future, do you think that the businesses can still do that on their own? Would that be wise to have universities working at one little corner and business on the other corner and government somehow in the middle and they talk their own ways? Wouldn't it be wiser to use this possibility that we have of bridging government, academic institutions, and business to get into the business of building futures? Because I don't think that we can build the futures only on experience or only on everyday practice. What would you say to that?
I think sometimes crisis is bring opportunities. As you know, in Chinese word, crisis has two components. The first component means threat. The second component is opportunity. It's a two-sided coin. So depending on how you look at it, it can be a threat or an opportunity. I think in relation to this issue of public sector partnership, how educational institutions can play a role in it, I think it's a good example. In 2003, in Hong Kong or in Asia, there was an outbreak of a deadly disease called SARS. In that year, 2003, tourism in Hong Kong was totally wiped out. Hotels were running at average of 7% occupancy rate, and very few tourists coming. We were all wearing masks for a couple of months. After this crisis, some good things happened. That is, the government, private sector, education institutions all had some common goal that we need to talk and think about how we can work together to bring tourists back to Hong Kong. The Hong Kong government initiated a group called Tourism Strategy Group. It was about 15-member group representing the government, Hong Kong Tourism Board, Hotels Association, Restaurant Association, Retail Shoppers Association, and professors. And we regularly met to brainstorm ideas. And that strategy group is still existing, is still continuing, and became a good example of corporate governance for other destinations. So I think there are ways we can bring different stakeholders of tourism. I think this is one real problem in our industry because tourism is so fragmented. There are so many different stakeholders. Oftentimes they have different agendas and different competing goals. So I think we need to bring them together. Certainly universities, academics can have a role also playing the role of bringing them together. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Still deeper into the hard questions. Professor Hawkins, I have an early recollection of our first meeting, which happened sometimes, a long time ago, should I say the year? Anyway, sometime in the late 80s. And I remember you coming to a conference organized in Madrid. It was a big conference. At the time when tourism was really changing, the tourism paradigm, the mass tourism paradigm was really changing. And you came and we asked you, please, to talk about future scenarios. And I very much recall your involvement and your exposing incredible future scenarios. You were talking about many of the things that have happened later on, both technological and in terms of processes. The question is, when we talk about innovation, we think that, and Professor Jafari said it very well, innovation is change, so let's change. But of course we cannot change for the sake of changing. We change to build futures and better futures. So don't you think that when we talk about innovation in tourism, we should be much better at thinking of future scenarios? Because the present situation now is we are telling that tourism will grow 4% every year or 3.8% every year, and we take ceteris paribus, business as usual. Now, that is unlikely to happen. I mean, we better, if we want to do innovation for a purpose, we have to visualize where we want to go. What would you say about that?
Thanks for that question. When I first started looking at the future, it was long term. We were looking at 20 to 25 years. And the longer I have been in studying the future, the shorter is the time period. It's coming down to now 3 years, maybe 5, you know. But I'd like to go back to the methodologies that we use. In fact, I've talked to Dr. Chon because we have a project in Jordan, and we are working with the University of Jordan, my university, and they are trying to find ways in which the university could help upgrade the information systems of the Jordan Tourism Board. And I recalled having been at Hong Kong Politécnica University that they have an excellent system that Han Song has put together with Dr. Chon. It's a complete information system, but it's designed for decision making. Now, part of the design is a forecasting model, but the more important part of what they're doing, in my judgment, is they then create alternative scenarios. And then they present these alternative scenarios to stakeholders who can make intelligent decisions. So to me, it's all about decision making. And I think that type of a model, in fact, Ernesto's Bartolone's presentation earlier also talked about a very similar model. What I'm hoping is that we could begin to get those types of research center activities in the knowledge network, beyond also the university systems, because they're really in the bridge. They are right in the middle of theory and practice, and I think we need much more of that at the national level, and then later we need the same things at the localized, decentralized level, because that's where the action really is in the world. That's where the so-called rubber hits the road, and that's where the impacts are made either positive or negative. It's the local level, and we need information there.
I jump in without the bridge.
But I must, no, but I want you to talk about the bridge. Because Professor Jafari, let's all recognize that you're one of the fathers, if not the father, of the idea of bridging theory and practice. And in fact, you, several years ago, you launched a series of books with Emerald Publishers, which is precisely called Bridging Tourism Theory and Practice. So as one of the originators of this idea of bridging tourism theory and practice, let's talk about the dissemination. A series of books is part of dissemination. Education is dissemination. We're not talking now about the research part, but we're talking about the education, information, training, publishing. Do you think we are doing it well? Do you think some other initiatives could happen to disseminate. You cannot innovate until you have enough followers. You said that before. So do you think we are doing fine? Any suggestions on that?
I get to that question, so you would not accuse me that I didn't answer it. But I want to go back to your question to Dr. Hawkins about the future. I want to partially answer that question. Tourism always reacts to the past. Tourism has not been in the tradition of making the future. We wait for things to happen. When things happen, we react and we may become innovative. We are not automobile industry to design the automobile of 2017 today. We don't do that. The fashion industry has already figured out the fashion of next year. They are ahead of the game. They read the minds of the people. They create what people want in the future. I cannot really think of too many examples which are futuristic in design and practice in hospitality and tourism. We need to get there. We are not there. And talking about it is
But
very...
let's not offend Mr. Branson on space tourism.
I'm sorry?
Let's not offend Mr. Branson on space tourism.
But that was also in reaction to the demand of the market.
I disagree totally. We've had this concept that everything is driven by demand. Certainly that is a significant, factor. But we also have supply, innovation. Disney, for example, he created the whole theme park movement. He took caricatures and he put them in an animated fashion for people's enjoyment. That's true. Creativity, that's invention. And we have other kinds of supply-led inventions, that we need to look at, because I think there's two ways of, innovating. The one we're talking about is the theory to practice. It's nice and sequential and so on. But there's also the practice that eventually, inductively creates a theory, or at least evolves into a theoretical understanding. So I really think it's both. I think we can reach theory through practice, or we could get to practice through theory.
Yes, can I also comment on this topic? Because yes, I think to a certain extent, like what Professor Jafari said, our industry is somewhat reactive rather than being proactive. But I think we need to change that. We need to change. I always use this as an example. This is, Procter & Gamble invented this. What is this? This is called Tide to Go. Tide to Go. What is Tide to Go? Tide, as you know, is a laundry detergent created in the 1970s. At that time, that was seen as innovation. The housewives loved it because they can put a little detergent and wash the whole load of washing machine. But over the time, they recognized that there is a new competition coming in. Their market share was shrinking from 100% to 90, 80, all the way down to 20%. So they did research and came with this new product called Tide to Go. I always take one with me when I travel. When I eat lunch today, if I drop oil, salad oil on my tie, it can destroy my tie. So I can simply use this Tide to Go to wipe it out, and the dirt will be gone. By the way, I have not been sponsored by Procter & Gamble to say this. But this is, to me, an innovation. Think about Starbucks coffee. Starbucks coffee, whether you like the coffee or not, that's a different story, changed the industry of coffee industry. Until Starbucks coffee, no coffee chain was able to sell a cup of coffee for $5 and make money. Now everybody's doing it. Why? Because Starbucks coffee lifted the industry. They are selling not just coffee, they are selling lifestyle. So I think that is what we need to do in our industry too. For that reason, in our hotel icon, actually, we have 262 rooms in the hotel. 3 rooms are called tomorrow's guest rooms. These are experimental rooms, prototype rooms. We are experimenting new things. We are anticipating what the future guests may need. We are trying out, and we want to share that knowledge with the industry. Sometimes we say that, try this, it works. Or say, don't do this because you will waste your money and time. So I think we institutional education institutions, researchers have the obligation to serve the industry by leading the industry, not just reacting to the industry.
Thank you very much, Professor Chon. I'm going to ask you again, Professor Jafari, because you're really helping this panel to really get into things. But you didn't answer my question, and this time I'm going to go again that. Now, how about bridging in the way of dissemination of creativity in the way to innovation? What ways do we have? You are editor of a volume series, as I mentioned before. You have enormous experience in education at university level. You have enormous experience also with business and with government. So do you think we are doing the whole story of creating a community of knowledge and tourism? Is what we're doing is enough? Any new ideas?
Okay, I have to again go to the previous speaker. I'm not going to avoid the question because a debate is cumulative. It's not pieces. So I want to go back to your comment. Try to go. So a recommendation for you. Why don't you get in touch with the producer and say, give me enough supply, I put it in every hotel in Icon Hotel. Complimentary. If I were that company, I would also, KLM, Aeromexico would approach them and say, give me one of those, and I put them in the travel bag of the first class and second and business class tourists. People, when they sample it, they would do it. So I think I want to begin with that story, try to go. The reason we have not succeeded is because we need to have knowledge to go.
I want to assure the audience that we are not taking money from the advertisers.
But it wouldn't hurt.
Please the question.
We need to have try to go, we need to have knowledge to go. Our knowledge has not been palatable for the tourism industry nor for the government. We do not write in the way that they would understand, the way they would apply it. We write for each other, and we quote each other. It's a lot of inbreeding and going on of the knowledge. The story behind connecting theory and practice, bridging theory and practice, is that we, not the industry, we have to learn to speak the language of the industry. We have to simplify it. They do not want 20 pages of literature review. They are not going to read it. They do not want to know the formula that resulted into that answer. They want the results. And the results they want, Dr. Fayos-Solà, is more bullet point, application. This is how this is why, and this is how it's going to work. And that's the beginning of bridging theory and practice, trying to write it in the language that the industry and the government, by the way. Government is more problematic. Industry sticks on. They have investment, they have to stay in the business. The government changes constantly. So by the time we educate the incoming cadre of decision makers, they're gone with the next elections.
Thank you very much, Professor Jafari. This time you did answer. Thank you.
Well, thank you, thank you.
Thank you. Let's go back to a topic that it is a question, which is why is not innovation happening? We are all persuaded. We have to do innovation. And we are in the business of innovation from academia, from business, from government. And we are here in the UNWTO Knowledge Network Forum, which is all dedicated to innovation. So let's go back to the issue of why is innovation not happening? In what sense is innovation disruptive? We have been talking lately, there's a lot of recent literature about disruptive innovation, meaning that if you have to choose between really creating a new product, a new process, new governance, or staying where you are because you have too much invested in where you are already. So let's admit that there are barriers and a bumpy road to redefining innovation. Can we, if we are in the business of facilitating and promoting innovation, and we are in WTO trying to do that, then how should we about that? Because let's admit that innovation will not always happen automatically. Professor Hawkins.
Well, I'm following up on Dr. Jafari's last comment of, understanding the language, and certainly helping industry understand our language in academia is part of it. But at the same time, we have to understand the language of business, and we have to get the business community coming, to the universities. Part of that bridging of the gap is linking the two. Many years ago, I used to be very active in the Travel and Tourism Association. It was a research, group, and at that time, about 3/4 of the participants were industry-based, and then it got taken over by universities. I don't go there anymore. I'm more interested in being connected with the industry than just simply being connected with other university people. So I think our challenge is, how do we integrate the university, the knowledge, if you will, creators, disseminators, the people training the human resources of the future with the industry itself. Many industry groups have extensive research capabilities, and we need to connect with those research capabilities and create that bridging of the gap. I think a lot of innovation comes out of industry itself. In some cases, it is responding, as we heard yesterday, from crisis or clear-cut demand or some big data that gives us new insights. But I think in other cases, it's coming because industry experiments, with new approaches, new designs, new products, new services, and we can learn a lot from industry. And I think a challenge with our affiliate members is to truly link our knowledge network with the members. I'm hoping that more affiliate members who are not universities will join the knowledge network. We don't have that many. I think we have about 12 or 13 right now, but we can certainly add to our capability within the UNWTO family. But I think this kind of thing needs to be done in every major university system, like the University of Anahuac here, to have clear-cut relationships with industry, quid pro quo, ways in which we go just beyond internships, although they're very, very important, but that we do cooperative research with the industry. And let's not leave out government, because government is extremely important. And let's also remember the power of the civil society, the NGOs, as part of the whole environmental, movement, as part of women's rights movement. Let's not forget the indigenous communities, which are so important as the basis for authenticity, something different, something new, something no one else has. All that, I think, has to be connected in some way in a knowledge bridging activity.
I think the question is, what are the inhibitors for innovation? And I can think of two. One is, as I said earlier, our industry, tourism industry, is somewhat very traditional. And that, I think that is one reason. So we need to think outside the box to be more innovative. Here's one example, again, going back to hospitality industry. When I stay in a hotel and when I check out, I know there will be one question the cashier, front desk clerk will be asking. The question is, sir, did you use anything in the mini bar last night? That's one question they always ask me. My typical answer is no, because I don't want to use them because it's so expensive. Why the bottle of water is $3? I can go to 7-Eleven for 50 cents, right? Even if I say no, I didn't use it, sometimes they are calling the housekeeping department and speak their own language and say, go and check the room. You know what's happening. You feel, first of all, you felt offended because I said I didn't use it, but you don't trust me, you are checking the room. Secondly, you are being delayed. You have to go to the airport, you are being late. You are taken hostage until they check everything. I said, I have to go to the airport, so it will take only 5 minutes. This is our standard procedure. The worst thing comes. They said, when we checked your minibar, a can of Coca-Cola is missing. So you have to pay $3. I didn't drink the Coke. No, one can of Coke is missing, $3 you have to pay. I'll tell you, I never drink Coke in my life. Even at home, I don't drink Coke. Sir, you have to pay $3. You are so frustrated. you cannot go because of that. You say, how much is it? I'll pay you, but I'll tell you something. I'll never come back here again. This is a scenario that can happen, right? So in our hotel, we actually look at our minibar. What are the things people are consuming in the minibar? What are the things they want to have in the minibar? The basic things: water, sparkling water, orange juice, a couple of beers, or soft drink, chocolate bars. We added up all the things. How much will they cost at wholesale price when we purchase them? Conclusion was, it's not worth of arguing with customers. Let's give that all free. So in our hotel, we have a free minibar in every guest room. The only problem was many guests didn't believe us. They called front desk to make sure that this is free indeed. They don't want to be surprised at the time of checkout. So we now have a sign in every guest room. You are not seeing double. Double is like fuzzy. Minibar is free. Our guests love this. There was one American businessman who is coming to Hong Kong often. He said that when he's traveling around the world, look at the minibar in any hotels, he's thinking about our hotel. There was one guest who said that when airplane touches down in Hong Kong airport, his mouth is salivating because he wants to go to the hotel and drink the beer. So, you have to break away from traditional thinking. Think outside the box. That's one. Number two, to me, is, again, answer is in this room. In this room, I can tell there are 4 generations of people. Baby boom generation. There are Generation X, Generation Y, and even millennials. Millennials are people born after 1995. This year in my school, we have some freshman students who were born in 1995. Really babies, born in 1995. They are our clients in the university, our customers. Now, think about this. Today's theories of any kind of theories, even in tourism, were developed by baby boom generation, by us, without really understanding the Gen Y, for example. Gen Y, born after 1980, they are accounting for 24% of all population. They will be the drivers of the future. But still, our theories are by my generation. And we have Generation X after us. They were just following the instructions. They just follow our orders. And just whatever we say, they say, oh, we agree, and then follow. Well, I think Gen Y, I have been doing some research about Gen Y. They are very different. I was joking, they are different species of human beings. The way they think, the way they behave is so different. I'll tell you an example. Among the values of Gen Y is something called self-expression. They want to be themselves. What does that mean? If you go to a hotel industry, there is something called uniform. There is traditional uniform. Gen Y doesn't believe in that uniform. They want to be themselves. There was one employee in our hotel, young man, very good employee, but he came to work without wearing socks. So strange, wearing a business suit with no socks. So the general manager called him and said, it's important for you to wear socks. And he said that, I'll give you some money. He opened his wallet, gave some money out of his own pocket, go buy the socks. Tomorrow, the next day, this young man came back, but he was wearing socks, but red socks. Because he wanted to be himself. See, they are different. Another thing is the way of communication. As a dean of school, I'm always trying to communicate with my students. And I tell them that, come see me if you have any issues or problems, but they do not come to see me because they see me as somebody with authority, or they are afraid of coming to see me. One day in my conversation with our students, I learned that I asked them, what is your daily schedule? When you get up in the morning, what do you do in the morning? Do you go to exercise, or do you pray, or do you read the Bible, or what do you do in the morning? I was surprised that all 10 students I asked, they said that the first thing they do is look at Facebook. There was a message, clear message. Now I have more than 2,000 students of our school who are my Facebook friends. Through Facebook, they are telling me anything. They are communicating with me. I can also monitor what they are talking about, So we have to. So I think we have to think about the future in terms of generations. I think that is, to me, a major inhibitor for innovations in our industry.
Thank you very much. Professor Jafari, any comments on this?
Not exactly on that. But going back to bridging theory and practice, I talk about the fact that we don't speak the language of the industry. We have to, since we are coming to the closer to South America, we have to bring the industry and academia to tango. If they don't tango, nothing is going to happen. And this has not happened yet. We are not tangoing. We are occasionally talking with each other, occasionally drifting, occasionally coming together. So there's a second thing we have to do to bring them into our fold. And I'm making some efforts in that direction of bringing the industry and the academia together. And unless this happens, nothing will be happening, in addition to what we talked about. But I want to go a little bit beyond what is that we can do, which connects not to yours. All of us sitting here are university professors, so our main product, daily product, is education. So when I wake up in the morning, I think education, not the Facebook. Can we make a difference? And recognizing the generations we have talked about, recognizing that the demand is changing, tourism demand is changing, I think our curriculum should be the curriculum of tomorrow, not yesteryear. Majority of us are teaching the curriculum of yesteryear. And I'm one of the advocates of the following things, and I take every opportunity to do so. The students of hospitality and tourism have to become cosmopolitan individuals. What makes cosmopolitan? They must be multilingual. There's no choice there. Alan is sitting in front of me, asking him how many languages he talks. He says 4 languages. I feel ashamed. Multilingualism, multiculturalism, appreciation of other cultures. Students of tomorrow are not dealing, Mexican students of tomorrow are not dealing with Mexican tourists all the time. They're going to be more and more dealing with international tourists. So appreciation of other cultures, appreciation of other belief systems. Could it be religion, orientation, communism, socialism? It doesn't matter what it is, belief system. And a sense of geography. Do we actively teach these elements in our curriculum? Perhaps language has begun, not in every curriculum. And some of them are requiring now one language. I think it should be standardized. Multilingualism, multiculturalism, sense of geography, etc., must be built into the curriculum. And that is how we can bring about a change. If we cannot bridge to the industry, we educate the right people for tomorrow's tourism industry.
Thank you very much, Professor Jafari. I think we have been talking a lot. I hope that you have enjoyed it. I think we have enjoyed it, but I don't know about the audience. I would like to know what do you think, and what questions do you have, and what issues do you want to bring forward? So, please. Could you please state your name and institution before the question? Thank you.
Hi, congratulations. Please, I would like to ask you in Spanish, please, the translation for okay. Bueno, yo soy investigadora de Brasil, mi nombre es Daniela. Felicitaciones a todos. Antes de empezar mi pregunta, tengo 2 presupuestos. La primera es, el primero. En mayoría, generalmente los empresarios tienen miedo de innovar. 1. 2. En turismo no es muy común tener innovaciones radicales, disruptivas. Bueno, entonces, tenemos más innovaciones incrementales. Mi pregunta es, ¿por qué entonces, si hay una idea de que las innovaciones radicales en general tienen una gran inversión. Bueno, hay gente que piensa esto. Bueno, entonces, ¿por qué los empresarios tienen miedo de innovar? Si la inversión es pequeña, generalmente las innovaciones en turismo son incrementales. Muchísimas gracias. Thank you so much.
To me, I think there are two reasons. One is, they do not want to take a risk. And secondly, they are just too busy. They are too busy with their daily operation. They do not think about innovations. To me, these are two major reasons why industry is not as innovative.
Any other?
Yes, I want to go to Dr. Hawkins' Disney example. They don't have a department of innovation, but they have a department of Imagineers. Imagineers are sitting there and designing the product of tomorrow, today, based on research, based on psychology. So it's not that tourism industry does not recognize innovation. Sectors of tourism industry, unfortunately, do not do. But when they become major like Disney, they constantly, I don't know how many Imagineers they have, but would be probably more than the number of researchers we have in our departments.
Just a quick point on how to solve this problem. We have industries who recognize that change is needed, and many are adopting international development volunteer programs. IBM, for example, has the IBM Development Corps. We just had in Washington meetings of 50 corporations who are adopting international types of development programs to give their employees an opportunity to see the way things are done in other parts of the world, to get some cultural exposure. Beyond that, volunteerism for young people, you look at your student body here, they all want to travel internationally. In my judgment, experiential is the best way to learn about the world. So you got to get out and visit the world. We have 76 million baby boomers, many of them highly skilled, who really want to do good in the world. There's tremendous opportunities for change with the human resource talent we have, and it also is a way of breaking through some of these barriers.
Thank you. We have a question from a virtual audience, but I would like even questions from virtual audiences to be identified. So if you make any other questions, could you please say who is making the question, what institution is possible? But let's go to this question, which is a virtual audience question. What would be the link between tourism innovation and design thinking? And design thinking. Innovation and design thinking.
I got a quick response. It's called smart growth or intelligent design. There's a lot of movement in this area. You know, for example, the walkable city, the bikeable city, nighttime entertainment, the sociable city. There's many ways in which we could take new approaches, more intelligent approaches by design to create the changes that we want. It does mean we have to ally ourselves with a group of talented people we haven't mentioned, architects, engineers, urban planners, and policy and governance people.
Any other questions, please?
Yes, you were mentioning, I think the conversation has been very, very interesting. And I just would like to make 2 points. One, you're talking about the need to put together to work academy, private sector, public sector, and as Professor Hawkins mentioned, also the community, which is very important to create that vision. But I think the universities have a lot to do in tourism, in putting together and bringing in our curriculum 2 things. One is future studies, which is not part of the curriculum. Many of the contents are already dated. We're not thinking about teaching all of these actors, public, private, students, to think about the future and to create and to dream together about a future that could be. And on the other hand, I think the future of, and the other part that we need to put together as well is urban and rural. Most of us in the tourism sector are city mice. We're not thinking and we don't know about nature, we're not learning about the environment. And we have kids who have traveled the world, but maybe have never gone to a rural community in their own country. And as a last thing to say is that it is amazing, and I think that the engine of innovation is precisely millennials and this Y generation. We have amazing examples of what this Y generation is doing to cater and to serve and to host the future generation of tourists, and I think that is to be very much encouraged.
And your name and institution, please?
My name is Teresa Solis, and I am a consultant, and I work, I teach tourism planning for Anáhuac University.
Who would like to? Don? Would you like to take? All right, we do agree. Next question, please.
Well, my name is Jose Nieves. I am from Tabasco State. For instance, it's a real pleasure to listen to you. And it's a real pleasure to see, I'm sorry to say, but our holy cows of the tourism talking with this humility about what you were saying, about the problem that we have to understand each other, the part of the theory and the part of the entrepreneurs. I am an entrepreneur, and I'm sorry to say, but the innovations comes from the entrepreneurs, not from the other side. That's what I believe. Innovation and change. In 1964, Villahermosa, Tabasco, has inaugurated the road, paved it from Mexico City. In 1969, we communicated to Mérida, Yucatán by road. At the same time, we have the first TV communication online or direct. The word online was not used at that time. So when we communicate by road to Mérida, Yucatán, the man was in the moon. Let me jump from that time to the last year. Last year, my son, 7 years old, when I was trying to teach him something, say, don't be dumb, papi. Look at in Google. He has 7 years old. And this year, my son that has 13 years old was playing in my living room with kids from around the world, a game, a video game, in my living rooms, from guys from Russia, and they were not speaking, they were playing. I was amazed. What's going on? How fast is this world moving? Are we moving in the same way in case of tourism? I don't know. I think we're not. If we move at least a little bit farther than we are moving, I think the industry of the world in the next 20 years, if I think in 20 years what's the best industry to be in, I'm sure it's going to be in tourism. Or I think so. Or I would like to believe it. Because everything is going to be virtual, digital. And I would like to still believe in that the people will still liking to go to visit the places instead to feeling it like in the pictures in sci-fi. I don't know. Maybe they will travel in sci-fi. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. I would like to believe that it will be personally, but we have to do things, and I strongly believe that if we, just let me tell something between the theory and the practice. We know, everybody knows the theory of what we listen to here with Alfredo Gonzalez, but they put it in practice. And they got 1.1 million tourists more and $3.8 billion more in the pocket of brand USA, of USA.
Thank you, Mr. Nieves. And I think we basically agree. You want to comment?
I make a quick comment. I agree with the story of your children. Sometimes we could play the game according to the new situation, and we don't. So I do not know how to blame. Generation after the younger generation and even our generations like the internet a lot. They work with it. But the airlines don't offer it yet. Is it the negligence of the airlines or is it the policymakers? You see, sometimes the opportunity is there, but the doors are not open, but I do not know who is closing the doors.
I didn't want to let one of your comments go by. You said it's the entrepreneurs, you know, who are at the center of change. They are the agents of change. But entrepreneurs aren't only in the business community. We have entrepreneurs, hopefully more of them, at universities and colleges. We need entrepreneurs in government. We need entrepreneurs in the private sector, civil society. But entrepreneurship, you know, that's where the change occurs. There's a lot of risk being taken, and sometimes it's disruptive, but I think it's important for us to understand the value of entrepreneurship and how we could encourage it in all of our programs.
Thank you, Don. I think we have time for a couple more questions only, and then we have to get to a close. So, any?
Clara Inés Sánchez, directora de Calidad y Desarrollo Sostenible del Turismo del Ministerio de Comercio, Industria y Turismo de Colombia, y también docente e investigadora. Let me to congratulate you. It is a privilege to be in front of people such prestigious in terms of tourism research. I would like to formulate my question in Spanish. Comentaba el señor Jafari, doctor Jafari, acerca de la demanda y pues digamos que en términos de mercados, pues sí es indudable que la demanda tiene un papel importante en el impulso que se le pueda dar a la oferta. No obstante, trayendo a colación, por ejemplo, ya que hablaban ahora del tema de las redes, de la tecnología, de la globalización, de las comunicaciones, por ejemplo, a Manuel Castells cuando hablaba de la creación de públicos, ¿qué tanto puede mediar también en el éxito o en el impulso de una innovación en términos de turismo, la comunicación y la creación, digamos, de esas necesidades por parte de quienes hacen esas comunicaciones? ¿Qué creen ustedes sobre eso?
I think one of the key things we have to understand that there's only so much that we could control, you know, as part of the official tourism sector. I mean, if you're a business, you should have more control. If you're a public-private partnership or a destination management company or an airline or whatever, you have maybe some level of control, but there's some things that are beyond your control. Then there are many things happening in the world that we don't have any control over, but we've got to be prepared for them. Climate change, for example, sure, we have a footprint. We can make some changes in our sector to reduce carbon emissions, but it's the world really that we have to be concerned about. How do we, you know, react to it? And just the only point I'm trying to make is we have to be realistic. Let's focus on those things where we have some reasonable chance of making change and controlling the future and creating that desired state that we'd like to be in. And at the same time, let's recognize there are many things that are beyond our control, but we better understand what they are and how we're going to respond to them.
I may continue on the same subject. Change that you talk about, the things we can change and the things we cannot change, and we have to be conscious and realistic about it. There is no industry but tourism which is victims of change that we cannot control. Crime and terrorism. What can we do about it? Nothing. When it happens, who pays for it first? The tourism industry. SARS was mentioned. Immediate. What can we do about it? The tourism industry is totally helpless. The tsunamis, the earthquake. we have all these elements way beyond our control, economic crisis, way beyond our control, and then we have to survive in this environment, most part of which we cannot control. And I think, going back to my education idea, we have to prepare our students for that tomorrow also, that there should be plan A's and plan B's and plan C's, not that there's this standardized ways of dealing with innovation, alternatives, etc.
Yes, sir.
I think innovation is important. We'll have to continue to innovate for two reasons. One is because of demand, as we already acknowledged, especially with changing demographics and changing consumption style of our future users of our product. I think we have to continue to innovate. Secondly, because of competition. If you are not innovative, you'll be falling behind. But I think at the same time, most important is we have to get all the basics right. That's most important, fundamental reasons what we are providing, basics. I read in an industry magazine that in one hotel chain, they did a survey of why guests are calling front desk. The number one reason they are calling front desk is because they want to know how to turn off the light. I mean, simply just they want to turn off the light. The hotels are making it so complicated with the gadgets, introduction of technologies. It became so difficult to turn off all the lights to go to sleep. So I think there's a message. You have to get all the basics right. Thank you.
We have just time for one very fast question and answer, and then we have to get to a close. Please.
Okay, thanks. My name is Olena. I represent the National Academy of Science of Ukraine. And my question is, what is the most essential in tourism from the point of view of an ordinary person, a client? As for me, it's emotions, feelings, and satisfaction, as we have discussed at our last section on products and experiences. So I suppose that those innovations will be successful, which satisfy a tourist. No, nevertheless, that's innovation product, or innovation technology, and so on. And another point of view which I want to pay attention is in tourism, it is really not so a lot of radical innovations. A lot of them are like combinatory one, and as we could see the level of innovation, they are mostly regional one. For maybe from such point of view, it sometimes repeats the best practice from other countries. And the question is, are those innovations unique or no? And all those who product those innovations believe that they are unique. And I suppose that it's true because every innovation in tourism maybe use an idea, an already known model, but have local background, local conditions. That's why it could be estimated as a unique one. But it's interesting to know your point of view on this question. Thank
you very much. Thank you very much. Any quick answers?
I really liked your point about looking at different approaches in other parts of the world. I believe it's next year there will be more people traveling from developed countries to developing countries. It's a major transformation. Most of my work the last 25 years has been in developing countries. There's a lot of innovation that's happening in developing countries that we could learn from. The old model used to be send somebody from the United States anywhere in the world and kind of apply the US model. That's no longer out there. So I think we need to find, and this is a wonderful role for the World Tourism Organization, because they have the relationships with the developing countries. And we need to learn from them, and we need to bring them into the knowledge network.
Thank you for mentioning experience. that's the only product we have. We have no other product. The only thing we really produce is experience. And all the innovations and changes we are talking about is about improving that experience. So I hope we don't think about innovation in the big jump, but even gradual improvement of experience, satisfaction of the customers. And these are very important. I tell my students, we are in the business of manufacturing memories. I use the word manufacturing intentionally because it registers. That's the only thing we really manufacture, memories and experiences. And how to do it, that's what we should teach.
Well, thank you very much. I would like to thank the audience for being with us so proactively all the time. I would like to thank, of course, the organizing institutions. I would like to thank the virtual audiences who hopefully have been also following us and getting some ideas out of us. And I hope that we have answered the two key questions. To be or not to be. I hope that we want to be creative individuals, and I hope that we want to be creative institutions and innovating institutions. And how to do that? We understand that to do that, we have to be increasing our human capital, but also we understand that we have to change, at least a little bit, the nature of our institutions, so that there is room to think, to create, and to implement thinking. So thank you very much for being with us.